I'll admit I was a pretty tough critic of the PlayStation Portal when it was first shown off, but I've actually been using it pretty regularly since it came out last November, and it's actually been surprisingly great, not just for me, but a lot of people online, and I think Sony themselves are even surprised at how successful it is. They were struggling to keep up with the demand for a little while, and I actually couldn't get one myself until early December, but here we are now about 6 months later, and I thought I'd put together a little review on my impressions of this unique PlayStation accessory. Let's start on the outside and talk about the hardware and the product design first, just to get it out of the way. The Portal is basically a DualSense controller cut in half, and then there's a very nice 8-inch LCD display stuck right in the middle. I will say that I think it's pretty ugly as far as aesthetics go, but I have gotten used to it, and I think I'm just not a fan of the whole design language of the PlayStation 5 generation. Though I know a lot of people online really like the white swoopy design language of these devices, and I do suppose compared to the plentiful handhelds out there, it does stand out from the rest since there are so many black plastic rectangles out there. But I just think this device in particular looks kind of wonky. This design has been something that Sony's been tinkering with since the PS4 days. There were even images of a DualShock 4 version of the Portal that were patented a few years back. Let me know which side of the fence you're on in terms of how the PlayStation Portal looks on the outside. Beyond that, there's really not much else different from a DualSense controller. It has a USB-C port, a 3.5mm audio output, got a power button, volume buttons, and a unique PlayStation Link button, along with some speakers along the top of the screen. One thing about the hardware itself that's given me a bit of concern is the analog sticks. They are smaller than a regular DualSense for some reason, and they often have this clicking issue that happens quite regularly that I've seen online. And at certain angles with the analog sticks, you can actually see inside the controller because the plastic doesn't quite reach the full range of the joysticks, which is just kind of a strange quality control thing in my opinion. A lot of people have come out and said that this clicking is nothing to worry about after they opened up the device, but I feel like making the stick smaller was just not necessary compared to the DualSense. It's not like this thing is any more pocketable or portable because of a few millimeters of savings off of the analog sticks. Like, it still sticks up quite a bit. They still might as well be full size if they didn't put in like tiny ones like the Switch has. It's also a pretty expensive device. Sony has been really pushing their pricing the last few years, and this thing along with the DualSense Edge are prime examples of that. When you compare this thing to other Android-based handhelds, it does have quite a premium price tag to it. But there's also some other devices like the Logitech G Cloud, which are quite similarly expensive for what you get. But when you go with those cheaper handhelds like Retroid or other devices like that, you are trading off a lot of quality of life and ease of use. And there usually is quite a steep learning curve to get those things up and running with various remote play apps and potential emulators. But with that said, the Portal is also not a game console. It's a PS5 accessory. I would even describe it as a DualSense with a screen before I call it a proper console. But even with that semantic clarification, it's still got a lot of missed potential. One of the craziest decisions about the Portal is the lack of Bluetooth connectivity and forcing users to get a PlayStation Link compatible pair of wireless headphones, which as far as I can tell are only made by PlayStation themselves so far. And apparently this device does have the hardware for Bluetooth support, so maybe Sony will patch in Bluetooth support like the Switch did, but I strongly doubt it because I've seen a lot of people buying those PlayStation earbuds that cost as much as the Portal itself, and Sony's probably laughing all the way to the bank with that decision. The lack of Bluetooth has not been a big deal breaker for me, but I still think it's quite anti-consumer, especially when most mobile phones have forced people to transition to various Bluetooth wireless headphones already. I still use a phone that has an audio jack myself, so I still have pairs of wired earbuds kicking around if I really need them, but I generally just stick to the speakers when I'm playing the Portal personally. The speakers are top firing, which is a bit strange as well, and I do feel like it can be heard better for people around me than when I'm playing it. I also find that the audio levels are not very precise, and I'm almost always on the lowest volume level, but I wish I could go even lower than that quite often. Like, the button increments are quite large for me, and it's quite hard to move that volume indicator any lower than the lowest notch. It's quite hard to be precise with it. Something I also would have appreciated, but I'm not sure why they left out, is a way to remote play with PS4 consoles. Every remote play app on phones and computers can connect to PS4s or PS5s, so the tech is already there, and it would have been cool to use my PS4 as like a headless system or something, which would still free up my PS5 to be used on my TV. Moving on to the screen, I do think it's quite nice. Of course, it's no OLED screen like the Switch OLED or the Steam Deck OLED, but Sony has a lot of experience with making displays, and this is a really great LCD as far as they go. I actually find myself keeping it on quite a low brightness when I'm indoors, and I don't think I've ever played it beyond like 40% brightness except when I've tried it outside a couple of times. However, similar to the audio, I do think that the brightness curve towards the lower end of the control dial is quite sensitive, and it seems to drop at a bit of a strange rate, and I can never get quite the right brightness that I'm looking for when I'm in a darker environment. When I'm using the screen, I do notice the stuttering issue that many folks have pointed out, but it's not really a major issue for me once I get into a game. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, supposedly the Portal is running its display output at a full 60 FPS when the PS5 actually runs and outputs games at 59.97 FPS. So it actually can cause some stuttering when you're playing on the Portal. However, the issue that does pop up and bothers me quite often is the HDR issue, which I basically made an entire video about a while back. That issue basically comes down to the PS5 often sends out an HDR video signal to the Portal, even though it's not an OLED display and it's not an HDR compatible display, and it often results in a very blown out image when the screen is showing something really bright. Here's the example I used in my previous video about this issue, where the clouds in this image are completely washed out on the Portal screen. And here's another huge instance that's been popping up for me when I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima. When you go to the map screen, it basically appears so bright that it's almost unreadable when you're playing it on the Portal. As I said, this has been a huge point of annoyance for me, and I'm about 90% sure that it's caused by HDMI link features between the PS5 and my TV. And the most cited solution that I've seen online is to unplug your TV's HDMI cable from the PS5, which is completely idiotic because that defeats the purpose of the Portal being a remote play device. And if you need to walk to your PS5 for it to work optimally, that just makes no sense. What if you're not home? You can't unplug it. I've ranted about this issue enough, and I'm absolutely gonna just keep calling it out until Sony patches it because it's pretty unacceptable. There are quite a few solutions to this problem that they could easily patch in through a software update. But yeah, basically the screen is great for an LCD, but the software is still causing some problems for it. Sony does update it every now and then, but hopefully they're listening to the feedback and they'll get on that in the next update. Similar to the DualSense and especially the DualSense Edge, I think the battery life is quite poor on the PlayStation Portal. I would say I can get anywhere from about 2 to 4 hours of battery life depending on the games I'm playing. PS4 titles obviously run a little bit lighter because of their lack of full haptic feedback compared to PS5 games, but if I play something like Helldivers 2 with a very dynamic gun like the Arc Thrower, that uses a lot of rumble and full dynamic triggers on a really constant basis. So I find that the Portal drains really fast when I'm playing something like that. Also with the battery, there is a lack of a battery percentage option on the interface of the Portal itself, which is pretty lame because when you're charging the device, it actually shows the percentage that it's charged so far. So it's just kind of weird that there's only a 3-segment battery indicator in the regular UI. It's just not a very helpful indicator. And then also the charging speed seems kind of slow compared to many fast charging phones these days, but I don't think that's a super big deal because you can still play while you're charging the device. The USB-C port is not in a very intrusive position on the console at all. I have managed to extend my battery life a bit by turning off all of the on-device lights and lowering the rumble sensitivity, but prior to that, I was quite let down by the battery performance. I also just felt like the rumble was a bit strong for a portable, like when I was like laying down and it's vibrating, you can feel it in the whole couch or the whole bed. There's a lot of rumble. In terms of ergonomics, this is a very comfortable handheld, as many people have said. Of course, it's because it is almost like holding a regular controller. Compared to things like the Switch or the Steam Deck, this is just miles better. In some ways, it is just like a little bit too big. When I occasionally pick up a Vita game, it just blows me away at how comfy and ergonomic this little device feels, as long as you don't need to use the back touchpad. But I think the sizing of the Portal next to stuff like the Steam Deck was the right move, but I think a lot of people would really dig a little bit of a smaller model that's maybe more reminiscent of the PSP or the Vita for a more on-the-go size. Maybe like a 5 or 6 inch screen, something like that. It is quite light for how bulky it looks, but I still find it can get tiring or uncomfortable to hold it in a regular sitting or lying position. I find that propping it up on a pillow to be right in front of your face is usually the most comfortable way to hold it. But even then, my hands can get a little bit uncomfortable after longer playing sessions. I do have smaller hands, so that might be a big factor in that regard. I was someone who found the DualShock 4 to be more comfortable than the DualSense due to the size and the rounder handles, so I think it's because of the way the DualSense or Portal handles push into my palms. But your mileage may vary in that regard. While I've never had major issues with the streaming latency, it is noticeable to me. I'm definitely not trying to play any online competitive multiplayer games like first-person shooters or fighting games. Rocket League is one of my favorite games, but this is not a good place to play it. It is really awesome for most single-player stuff, and as I said, I've been playing a ton of Helldivers 2 on this thing. Some other standout games that are perfect on Portal are RPGs like Persona games. Visual novels are great. I've been playing a lot of Phoenix Wright on this thing. Even Animal Well was quite great on this thing, and I had no issues with platform platforming and the timing sections. So while the latency is great, the streaming quality was initially not very good on this thing, but after the latest update 2.0.6, I actually felt that the streaming quality and the bitrate was more consistent overall. For the first few months, it would often drop below 720p and then the quality would never recover back to the initial 1080p until I just disconnected and reconnected the device. However, since that last update on April 2nd, it has always felt quite sharp, showing at least 720p, and it often recovers back to full quality. Overall, the bitrate and quality is just more aggressive since that update. My PS5 is hardwired and I use a Google Wi-Fi mesh network. That's all on a wired backhaul just for reference of my home networking. It's pretty good for a Wi-Fi 5 network, and I mostly play this at home because of the potential issues with public Wi-Fi sign-in and all that. This thing does have a browser. When you actually view patch notes for updates, it opens a browser, but there's no sort of ways to get out of that single web page. It is annoying for sure, but I also have a backbone that I could always throw on my phone if I needed. And if I'm actually on the go, I think I would still prefer to bring like a Vita or a phone loaded up with emulators, just because of the portability and avoiding the potential issue of lugging this huge thing around, and also any potential problems with a sign-in screen or streaming issues. So it really has just been an at-home TV alternative accessory for my use case, and I can't speak super deeply about using the Portal as a real on-the-go portable device. But even then, I don't think it's intended to be portable. This is not something you want to be lugging around or throwing in a bag. Overall, I've really liked using the Portal. Like many, I've surprised how much I like it. I had a Retroid 3 Plus Android handheld just prior to getting this thing, and at the time I was quite snobby in thinking it was superior. But after these last few months using this thing, similar to how I love playing on PS5 compared to PC, I find that playing on a Portal compared to a phone or Android gaming handheld is just so straightforward and just gets you playing your games without all the tinkering. You just get right into gaming and you stick to gaming because that's all you can do. It gets me playing games and it does it quite well. There's a lot of room for improvement in terms of hardware and software, but even then I think there's a real appeal and charm to the simple bare bones approach that this thing is as a PS5 accessory rather than a handheld console. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and let me know what you think of the Portal so far. Have you been enjoying it? And do you think that Sony will release an improved iteration at some point? Let me know.